Beep 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 beep. Morning, Jester. How are we? I've come across an article which I quite like in the Washington Examiner in America. So, hello, America. The scientific revolt against gender ideology has begun. It was pointed out by a group called Parents with Inconvenient Truths About Trans. I'll link to their website. They're a great group, and I've done work with a few of them. You know who you are, okay? Parents with Inconvenient Truths About Trans. It's so polite. I love it. It reminds me of a programme on British television a few years back called Up the Women, which was about the suffragettes. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Up, up, up the women, up, up, up. What was it? Grandma was a suffragette, or something like that. Anyway, starring these wonderful English actresses called Up the Women. And the name of their group was the Banbury Women's Society politely requests suffrage, women's suffrage. I don't know why it reminds me of that, but it does. It's polite, it's sort of polite in that kind of nice way. But it's pointing out a number of things in the Washington Examiner that I think are worth considering, because it really is starting to show the deficit of scientific evidence in regards to gender transition, pushed by the likes of Jack Turbine. You know him. There's a bloke called Jack Turbine. He's always pushing this stuff, isn't it? I know his name's Turban. I prefer to call him Turbine because he goes round in circles and produces a lot of hot air, right? So we'll have a look at that, right? Parents with Inconvenient Truths About Trans, which is rather good. Okay. So, gender activists often defend the physical transition of gender-confused children, or, as I call it, and everybody else does, trans in the gay way. This is the conversion therapy. I do hope you saw Kemi in action. This is the conversion therapy. By citing the scientific research that supposedly backs up the efficacy and safety of these experimental treatments. But one close look at this research proves the exact opposite, and a number of experts are finally coming forward to say so. A new in-depth report by the British Medical Journal, very important journal here in the UK for our American and other worldly leaders here, world leaders. A new in-depth report by the British Medical Journal reveals just how flimsy the science behind sex change treatment is. Sex change treatment. The Endocrine Society commissioned 2 systematic reviews for its clinical practice guidelines. Now, obviously, they're dealing here solely with medical issues. They're interested only in that. Now, that's fair enough because it's the British Medical Journal and they're talking to doctors and people who are involved in the medical area. But again, from my perspective, if you're looking at something like CAS, I think it should be widened out completely. We need a public inquiry into this whole ridiculous falsity boondoggle, which is what it is. So they commissioned the 2 reviews for clinical practice guideline, endocrine treatment of gender dysphoric, gender incongruent persons. One on the effects of sex steroids on lipids and cardiovascular outcomes. The other on their effects to bone health. So they were looking at what's going on here with the actual medical issues of it. To indicate the quality of evidence underpinning its various guidelines, the Endocrine Society employed the grade system, which is the grading of recommendation, assessment, development, and evaluation. Grading of recommendations, assessment, development, and evaluation, and judged the quality of evidence for all recommendations on adolescents as low or very low. That's the British Medical Journal, ladies and gentlemen, who are saying it, finally, loudly. Low or very low on the evidence that is being used by the likes of Jack Turbine to trans away the gay, okay? And obviously to hurt young people with this ridiculous ideological imposition by a cult. The report goes on to cite several systematic reviews of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, which is WPATH. Yeah, we need to look at them very deeply, back at the roots of where it came from. Gently. And such like the involvement in creation of the trans train. One of the commission's systematic reviews found that the strength of evidence for the conclusions that hormonal treatment may improve quality of life, depression, and anxiety among transgender people was low. And it emphasised the need for more research, especially among adolescents. The reviewers also concluded that it was impossible to draw conclusions about the effects of hormone therapy on death by suicide. Despite this, WPATH recommends that young people have access to treatment after comprehensive assessment, stating that the emerging evidence base indicates a general improvement in the lives of transgender adolescents. The emerging evidence base. Well, we're guessing, they say. The emerging evidence base. It's insane, isn't it? The emerging evidence base. A general improvement in the lives of transgender. Right, anyway, we go. WPATH has even admitted that the evidence supporting medical transition is so limited that a systematic review regarding outcomes of treatment in adolescents is not possible. You can't do a review. There isn't enough evidence. Why is it happening then? Could it be it's ideological? Could it be that there's some men with a possible fetish at the back of this? Could it be that there's money involved? Could it be that queering heteronormativity has taken a leap and become more important than protecting adolescents and children? Gosh, I wonder. However, even though it says that, it knows that it's not possible, according to the BMJ to do it, WPATH still has no hint of uncertainty. Indeed, one would think from reading WPATH's public statements on this issue that chemical and physical transition, let's call it what it is, castration and sexual, cutting off their sex lives and doing awful things to them, you would think from WPATH's statement that the transition is always the right solution for the patient and that it never leads to unwanted or unexpected consequences. This highlights to me how important people like Chloe Cole and Richie, and Peter and other people who are coming forward as detransitioners are going to be. Their voices are going to be the most important voices moving forward in eradicating this particular element of the malaise that's facing the West. We state, says WPATH, that when gender-affirming medical treatment is provided with a standardised multidisciplinary assessment and treatment process through informed consent and ongoing monitoring and psychosocial support, the rate of regret of gender-affirming medical treatment commenced in adolescence has been observed to be very low, and the benefits of treatment in adolescence are potentially greater than the benefits of gender-affirming treatment commenced in adulthood. The argument here for the creation of the Everchild. WPATH claims, hence the harms associated with obstructing or delaying access to wished for and indicated treatment for the majority appear greater than the risk of regret for the few. They literally did say, it's all right, the few don't matter, let's do it for everybody else. We'll sacrifice the few for the many. That's literally what that says. Dear God. But that supposed benefits to which WPATH refer simply are not reflected in the scientific data. They know that. So why are they doing it? In fact, one of the only studies claiming to show a connection between better mental health and social and physical affirmation had to be publicly revised to clarify that there is no such connection. And every single other conclusive study on this topic has found that the evidence in support of gender-affirming care is, at best, inconclusive. From the BMJ, Cochrane, that's ironic, isn't it? Cochrane, an international organisation that has built its reputation on delivering independent evidence reviews, has yet to publish a systematic review of gender treatment in minors. But the BMJ has learnt that in 2020, Cochrane accepted a proposal to review puberty blockers and that it worked with a team of researchers through 2021 in developing a protocol. But it ultimately rejected it after peer review. They've rejected the protocol in 2021 and we're still going. Just insane. A spokesperson for Cochrane told the BMJ that its editors have to consider whether a review would add value to the existing evidence base, highlighting the work of the UK's National Institute for Healthcare and Excellence, which looked at puberty blockers and hormones for adolescents in 2021. That's, if you will, NICE. They're called NICE, which is rather marvellous, ties in with the suffragette thing and the parents with inconvenient truth about trans. NICE are the British sort of body that provide well-researched guidance for the medical arena. It can be used by anybody. Their website's available. I'll put it in the doobries. You can have a look. That review found, but they did looking for evidence in the NICE review in 2021, found that evidence to be inconclusive, and there have been no significant primary studies published since. Is it me, or in 2021 when we discovered that this was all a crock, which is exactly what this is saying, and that the evidence base is so low there's nothing you can base anything on, should not transition in all forms have ceased at that point globally? That's the question I'm asking you today. I personally think it should. Likewise, a review from Florida's Agency for Healthcare Administration on the outcomes that are important to patients with gender dysphoria, including mental health, quality of life and complications, found that the body of evidence from the 61 systematic reviews that they looked at, 61 they looked at, was not sufficient to support puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones or surgeries in young people. Robert Garofalo, Chief of Adolescent Medicine at Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago, admitted that scientists who support gender-affirming care are more or less throwing crap at the wall and hoping it sticks. Find them, shame them, jail them. There you are, 3 stages. Find them, shame them, jail them. Dennis talks about stages, doesn't he? Our Dennis, he's done that, hasn't he? He talked about the stages of here's what gender's going to do, here's what's going to happen when gender falls. Know what you're talking about, don't you, Dennis? Hey? Ooh, you're buffed up. Fantastic. Throwing crap at the wall and hoping that it sticks. That's extraordinary, isn't it? It is a discipline where the evidence base is now being assembled, he said last year. It's truly lagging behind, I think, in some ways. There is far more evidence that physical interventions in gender-confused children make things worse. Except it doesn't say that. It says make things much worse. Much worse. The Endocrine Society, for example, acknowledged that chemical treatment in particular places a high value on avoiding an unsatisfactory physical outcome when secondary sex characteristics have become manifest and irreversible. A higher value on psychological well-being and a lower value on avoiding potential harm. They're pandering to the deluded. To be clear, gender activists don't really care whether the science backs up their agenda or not. But it does give them a claim to authority on this issue, which they have used aggressively in recent years to convince everyone of our powerful institutions, from the education establishment to the healthcare sector to the White House, to accept gender ideology as fact. Debunking their bogus scientific claims brings us one step closer to breaking this ideological grip. I'll include the article from the Washington Examiner, and they've got a link to the BMJ report. So if you don't think the Washington Examiner is a worthy, outlet, if you do things that way, then do what I do. Go and have a look at the BMJ report. Go and have a look at the nice website. Look, do your own work, find your own evidence, because they don't, do they? I've said that to people this week. Well, don't ask me, do it yourself. Oh, I can't be asked. That's always the answer, isn't it? Can't be bothered, shan't bother. Now listen, I would say there's something else to talk about. Just briefly, okay? As things hot up, people are going to start to split on various different things, because we're moving towards the heart of the beast now, and we're going to get to the point where we can slay it at some point, the heart of the beast. And as that happens, the collaborative process which has brought us here, which is where we've had people of all kinds and all sorts come together to move things forward, is going to find itself in disagreement about the nuance, because we're heading towards a nuanced approach. Get me? We got to stop this. We all screamed from left to right and up and down, culturally this way, culturally that way. We've got to stop this. We all screamed. And now we're moving forward, and we're beginning to see the coalescing of the various points of entry in the fight. So we'll pin them down on the medical side, we'll get in the universities, whatever it may be, is that there'll be disagreements as we get towards the nuance. I'm not particularly nuanced about this. I think the very concept is nonsense and the whole thing needs to go. We need to repeal the GRA, and there should be no transition. It should be medically impossible to have one, regardless of whether you're a child or an adult. The evidence to me now is overwhelming of the absolute harm this does, almost immediately, to any individual who takes part in it. Social transition in school should be illegal. But that's me, okay? That's where I stand. That's my line, okay? That's the line I've come to. Other people I've met have said, yeah, I've come to it too now. But it's taken them a while to get there. So as we move towards where the heart of this nonsense is, we'll begin to see that things will split and people will go, oh no, but maybe we need... So we might see some fractions. There'll be a quartering. We might, I'll go for half of that. No, we might see some fractures. And we shouldn't be worried by that, okay? Because that's what happens to collaborative endeavours. It doesn't happen to collective endeavours. Collective endeavours just get bigger and they're all mad and they fight amongst themselves. We can't do that, all right? So you'll see people will come with different voices about different things. And it reminded me of the story of the Gadarene swine. Which is a story, a biblical story, told about how Jesus came across this chap who was possessed by a demon, frothing and ranting in a kind of Linda Blair-esque way. And he, all right, out, damn demon. All right, here you go into the pigs. So he put the demons into the pigs, what are called the Gadarene swine. And the Gadarene swine then galloped off in, demonic fury. Your mother sells chops in hell. Anyway, off they went. Off they went and drowned themselves in the sea. Now, there is this thing called the Gadarene fallacy, okay, which is the idea that just because the herd is going the right way, that the herd must be right. Now, imagine if you look at above the pigs, okay, and they're running. All of a sudden, one pig went, no, I'm not going to drown myself. I'm going over here. It makes more sense, doesn't it? And the pig goes off to the left. If you were in the crowd, you'd look at the pig and go, where's he going, stupid sod? He's going the wrong way. Whereas the pig that's outside the crowd goes, I hope I'm going the right way, because I think they're wrong. So from the pig's perspective, he looks like the one that's mad, old, babe running off on his own. From our perspective, we're going, where's that damn pig going? The others are going. As that happens, there are going to be those of us as individuals that feel that we're pulling away from some of the more collectivist ideas in the fight. Just because you're going in the wrong direction doesn't mean the herd's right. That's the Gadarene fallacy, okay? So when you feel lonely and you think, well, I've taken my step and I'm going to stay here, when you've got to hold that line, when you need to say, these are my principles, do it, all right? Because it'll make you feel better. It doesn't mean you're wrong, right? And we don't want to be with the Gadarene swine, because I'm not both sidesing this, which is what people will try to do. There are no two sides. It's just a wickedness. Sorry, it is. Okay, so there's something from my American readers from the Washington Examiner. Hello, Americans. Readers, listeners. Hello, America. Oh, gosh. I have a job saying that because I sound like that bloke. What's it? Nixon. My fellow Americans. That kind of... I always think about him. I don't know why I'm mad. Apparently, he met with the British Prime Minister of the time, which I think was Callaghan or somebody. So he met with Callaghan, and Callaghan said the food was awful. And Nixon said to him, I am not a cook. All right, I'll get me out. Bye.